The morning mist clung to the forest floor like ghostly fingers when Dr. Alex Reed first heard the sound that would change everything. It was a whimpering cry, soft and desperate, coming from somewhere deep in the purple-leafed woods of Kepler 186f. He stopped walking and listened carefully. The sound came again, weaker this time. Alex had been working on this moon for 6 months now, studying the creatures that lived in its vast forests. The research station housed 12 scientists from 3 different species. There were humans, like Alex, the tall crystal-like Vortani who spoke in musical tones, and the bug-like Threx who clicked when they talked. They all worked together to understand the wildlife on this strange world. But something was very wrong in the forest. The shadow maws, massive wolf-like predators that ruled this moon, were acting strangely. These creatures stood 8 feet tall and had claws that could cut through steel. Their teeth were longer than a human hand, and their eyes glowed yellow in the dark. They were the perfect hunters, feared by every living thing on the moon, yet for the past month, the shadow maws had been abandoning their cubs. Alex and his team found young ones left alone in caves, hollow trees, and rocky shelters across hundreds of square kilometers. It made no sense. Shadow maws were known to be protective parents who would die defending their young. Following the whimpering sound, Alex pushed through thick bushes and found a small cave. Inside, 3 shadow maw cubs huddled together. They were about the size of large dogs, but already showed the fearsome features they would grow into. Their fur was midnight black with silver stripes, and their eyes were the same glowing yellow as their parents. When the cubs saw Alex, something amazing happened. Instead of running or trying to attack, they crawled toward him on their bellies. Their whimpering grew louder, but it sounded like they were asking for help rather than showing fear. Alex knelt down slowly, not wanting to scare them. "Hey there, little ones," he whispered. "Where are your parents?" The smallest cub reached him first. It pressed its head against Alex's hand and made a soft purring sound. Soon all 3 cubs were around him, seeking comfort and warmth. Alex was shocked. These were supposed to be deadly predators even as babies, yet they acted like friendly puppies around him. Alex called his teammate Dr. Zara Omir on his radio. "Zara, I found 3 more abandoned cubs. Can you bring some food and water?" "On my way," Zara replied. She was a Vortani, one of the crystal beings whose body looked like living glass. When she arrived 20 minutes later, everything changed. The moment the cubs saw Zara approaching, they screamed in terror. Not the whimpers Alex had heard before, but sounds of pure fear. They ran to the back of the cave and pressed themselves against the rock wall, shaking violently. Their eyes went wide with panic. "What did I do wrong?" Zara asked, confused. Her voice had a bell-like quality that usually calmed most animals. "I don't know," Alex said. "They were fine with me." Zara tried everything. She offered food, spoke in gentle tones, and even tried to sing the soothing melodies her people used with frightened creatures. Nothing worked. The cubs only became more terrified the closer she got. "Let me try," Alex said. He walked toward the cubs slowly. As soon as he moved away from Zara, the cubs began to calm down. When he reached them, they pressed against him, again, seeking safety. This pattern repeated when Dr. Crix arrived. Crix was a Threx, looking like a cross between a praying mantis and a person. The cubs reacted to him the same way they had to Zara, with absolute terror. But with Alex, they were calm and trusting. Over the next few days, the team found more abandoned cubs. Every single one showed the same behavior. They would run in fear from any alien species, but would approach Alex without hesitation. Soon, Alex was caring for 15 cubs, all following him around like he was their parent. The other scientists were amazed and confused. Dr. Naya Frost, another human researcher, decided to test something. She approached a group of cubs that had been staying close to Alex. The cubs looked at her carefully, then slowly came to her as well. They seemed cautious, but not afraid. "It's not just Alex," Naya said excitedly. "They trust humans in general." This discovery raised many questions. Why would the most dangerous predators on the moon abandon their young? Why did the cubs fear every alien species except humans? And most puzzling of all, how did creatures that had never seen humans before know to trust them? The mystery deepened when adult shadow maws began appearing around the research station. They didn't attack or threaten anyone. Instead, they watched from the forest edge, their glowing eyes visible in the darkness. The alien researchers became nervous, but the shadow maws seemed focused only on observing Alex and the human team members. One evening, Alex was feeding the cubs outside the station when he noticed a massive adult shadow maw standing just 50 meters away. It was the largest one he had ever seen, probably the mother or father of some of the cubs. Alex expected it to charge and try to reclaim its young. Instead, the huge predator sat down like a dog and watched. When one of the cubs wandered toward the forest, the adult made a low rumbling sound. The cub immediately returned to Alex's side. It was as if the adult was asking Alex to keep the cub safe. "This doesn't make sense," Dr. Crix clicked nervously. "Shadow maws should be attacking us for taking their young." "Unless they want us to take care of them," Alex said quietly. The idea seemed impossible. Why would the galaxy's most feared predators trust their most precious possessions to a species they had never encountered before? What could possibly make them believe that humans, small and weak compared to shadow maws, were the best choice to protect their cubs? As Alex watched the adult shadow maw disappear back into the forest, he knew they had discovered something that would change how everyone understood predators, humans, and the strange connections between species across the galaxy. The cubs curled up around Alex's feet, finally peaceful and safe. But the questions were just beginning. 3 weeks after Alex's discovery, emergency messages began flooding the communication networks across 17 star systems. Dr. Emma Chen, head of the Galactic Research Consortium, sat in her office reading report after report with growing amazement and concern. On Proxima 7, the giant spider-like razorbacks had abandoned their egg sacs and were bringing them to human mining colonies. On New Eden, massive flying creatures called stormwings were dropping their chicks near human settlements. The pattern was everywhere, and it was always the same. Apex predators abandoning their young, but only trusting humans to care for them. Emma immediately assembled a team of the best scientists in the galaxy. Dr. Mira Okafor, the leading expert on animal behavior, was the first to arrive at the research station on Kepler 186f. She was a tall woman with dark skin and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Behind her came a group of specialists, including Centauri empaths, who could read emotional states and advanced computer systems that could analyze brain patterns. "Show me these cubs," Mira said as soon as she arrived. Alex led her to the area, where the cubs now lived. There were 23 of them now, ranging from tiny ones barely bigger than house cats to adolescents nearly the size of adult wolves. They were playing, sleeping, and eating together like a normal family group. "They look healthy," Mira observed. "They are now," Alex said. "But when we first found them, they were dying. They wouldn't eat or drink when any alien species came near. We lost several before we figured out the pattern." Mira activated her scanning equipment and approached the cubs carefully. The machines were designed to read fear responses, stress hormones, and brain activity. The moment she got within 10 meters of the cubs, her equipment went crazy. The readings showed massive spikes in terror response chemicals. The cubs' brain scans looked like they were experiencing the worst fear possible. Not just afraid, but convinced they were about to die. Yet the cubs weren't running away. They sat frozen in place, paralyzed by fear so complete it stopped them from moving. "This is impossible," Mira whispered. They're experiencing pure existential terror, the kind of fear that makes animals die from shock. Alex walked toward the same cubs. The scanning equipment immediately showed different readings. Fear chemicals dropped to almost nothing. Brain patterns shifted to show curiosity and comfort. The cubs moved toward Alex normally, their tails wagging. "How are you doing this?" Mira asked. "I'm not doing anything special," Alex replied. "I'm just being human." Mira spent the next several days running every test she could think of. She discovered that human scent, body heat, and even heartbeat patterns had a calming effect on the cubs. When she played recordings of human voices, the cubs would search for the source of the sound. When she played alien voices, they would hide. The most shocking discovery came when Mira tested the cubs' responses to different types of humans. She brought in people who had been genetically modified to be stronger or smarter. The cubs showed some fear toward them. She tested people with cybernetic implants, artificial limbs, or other enhancements. Again, the cubs were nervous. "They only trust completely natural humans," Mira reported to Emma over a secure communication link. "No modifications, no enhancements, nothing artificial. Pure baseline human genetic patterns." Emma had more disturbing news. "We've confirmed the same pattern on 43 worlds now. Military units are reporting that human soldiers have been unusually effective on planets with dangerous wildlife. What we thought was better training might be something else entirely." The research expanded when they realized the adult predators were also behaving strangely around humans. On world after world, creatures that should have attacked human settlements were instead protecting them. Giant predators would hunt smaller, dangerous animals near human colonies, keeping the areas safe. They seemed to be acting as guardians. Dr. Luis Vega, a communications expert, made another breakthrough. He had been studying the sounds the cubs made and noticed patterns. When they were with humans, they made specific calls that seemed to mean safety or home. When aliens approached, their calls meant danger and death coming. "They're not just afraid of non-humans," Luis explained. "They seem to think non-humans are harbingers of death, like seeing an alien species triggers some deep programming that says, 'This means extinction.'" The mystery grew deeper when Mira's team discovered that the fear response was strongest in very young cubs and gradually decreased as they got older. Adult shadow maws, who had never interacted with humans before, showed mild wariness toward aliens, but nothing like the terror their cubs experienced. "It's like they're born with this knowledge," Mira said. "The younger they are, the stronger the response, as if something is programmed into their genetic memory." Emma decided to expand the research. She sent teams to study every reported case across the galaxy. What they found was consistent and troubling. Every apex predator species that abandoned their young showed the same basic pattern: terror of alien species, trust of humans, and complete calm when baseline humans were present. The teams also noticed something else. On worlds where humans had been present for longer periods, the predator species were showing signs of increased intelligence. Cubs raised around humans developed problem-solving skills their wild counterparts didn't have. They learned to use simple tools and could follow complex instructions. "It's like human presence unlocks something in their brains," Dr. Yuki Tanaka reported from New Eden. "The storm-winged chicks that have been with humans for 2 months are showing cognitive abilities we've never seen in their species." Back on Kepler 186f, Alex made a disturbing discovery. While reviewing old survey data from the moon, he found cave paintings deep in the mountains. The paintings showed bipedal figures interacting peacefully with creatures that looked exactly like shadow maws. The figures were clearly meant to represent some kind of intelligent species, and they were depicted as protectors and caretakers of the predator's young. "How old are these paintings?" Mira asked when Alex showed them to her. "According to our dating methods, about 2 million years old," Alex replied quietly. "Long before humans ever left Earth. Long before we had space, travel. But the figures in the paintings look human. Mira stared at the ancient artwork in silence. The implications were staggering. Either humans had been to this moon millions of years ago, which was impossible, or something that looked like humans had been here. Something that the local predators had learned to trust with their most precious possessions. As night fell over, the research station, Alex sat with the cubs gathered around him. They were content and safe, but the questions multiplied each day. Why did creatures across the galaxy know to trust humans they had never seen before? Why were they born with this knowledge? And what did ancient cave paintings suggest about humanity's true place in the universe? The cubs purred softly as they slept, but Alex knew that whatever answers they found would change everything humanity thought they knew about themselves and their role among the stars. Dr. Sarah Kim had spent her entire career studying ancient civilizations, but nothing had prepared her for what she found in the crystal archives of Vortani Prime. The elderly Vortani librarian, whose crystal body had turned deep purple with age, handed her a data crystal that contained texts older than most star systems. "These writings speak of the first shepherds," the librarian sang in the musical language of her people. "We always thought they were myths, but your recent discoveries make us wonder if we were wrong." Sarah connected the crystal to her translation device and began reading. The ancient Vortani texts described beings called the first shepherds, who had walked among the great hunters of their primordial world. These shepherds were described as soft-skinned but strong-hearted and possessing the scent of peace in their blood. According to the texts, they could calm the most vicious predators and teach them to protect rather than consume their young. "This doesn't make sense," Sarah murmured to herself. "These texts are dated at over 3 million years old. Humans weren't even close to evolving then." But as she read further, the descriptions became more detailed and disturbing. The first shepherds were described as walking upright on 2 legs, having smooth skin instead of fur or scales, and possessing 5-fingered hands perfect for gentle touches. They were said to carry warmth in their bodies and speak in soft tones that could soothe savage hearts. Sarah immediately contacted other archaeological teams across the galaxy. What they reported back made her hands shake as she typed her own reports. On world after world, ancient civilizations had stories about shepherds, peacekeepers, or gentle ones who could tame wild beasts and protect their young. The Threks had legends of the soft speakers who could make their ancestors' rage disappear with a touch. The mechanical axiom stored data files about flesh guardians who could interface peacefully with their most aggressive security programs. Even the warlike Drakmari had oral traditions about the calming ones, who could make their battle-bred hunting beasts become gentle nursemaids. Dr. Tom Wright, the best genetic researcher in human space, was brought in to study the biological side of the mystery. He had been analyzing samples from the predator cubs for weeks, looking for any clue about their unusual behavior. What he found in their DNA made him call an emergency meeting with the entire research team. "I've found shared genetic markers," Tom announced to the assembled scientists. "Not recent contamination, but ancient sequences that appear in both human DNA and the DNA of every predator species we've tested." He activated his holographic display, showing complex genetic patterns that spiraled through the air like luminous blueprints of life itself. These markers are located in the portions of DNA responsible for social bonding, threat recognition, and parental instincts. The odds of this happening naturally are so small that it's mathematically impossible. Dr. Mira Okafor, who had been studying the cubs' behavior for months, leaned forward. "What exactly are you saying, Tom?" "I'm saying that humans and these predator species share genetic code that was deliberately placed there," Tom replied. "Someone or something engineered these connections millions of years ago." The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. If Tom was right, then humanity's connection to these predators wasn't natural evolution or coincidence, it was designed. Sarah stood up and activated her own display. That matches what we're finding in the archaeological record. I've now confirmed similar stories on 67 different worlds. The pattern is always the same. Ancient beings who looked and acted like humans, interacting peacefully with apex predators and teaching them to nurture rather than kill. She showed them cave paintings from a dozen different worlds. Despite being separated by thousands of light years and millions of years, the artwork was remarkably similar. Bipedal figures with human proportions were depicted feeding young predators, healing injured ones, and living peacefully alongside creatures that should have torn them apart. "Look at this one," Sarah said, highlighting a painting from the desert world of Kronos 3. "This shows human-like figures teaching predator packs to hunt cooperatively instead of fighting each other. And this one from the ice moon Europa 7 shows them helping predator mothers build better shelters for their young." Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a xenoarchaeologist, had found physical evidence to support the ancient stories. "We've discovered tools on several worlds," she reported. "Simple devices that appear designed for caring for large predatory animals, feeding, implements, grooming tools, and even what look like medical instruments, all sized for human hands, all dating back millions of years." The most shocking discovery came from the Centauri Empire's historical databases. The Centauri were one of the oldest known civilizations, and their records went back over 2 million years. In their earliest entries, they mentioned trading with a species they called the Beast Friends, creatures who lived in harmony with dangerous predators and could travel safely through regions that no one else could survive. "The descriptions match humans perfectly," reported Dr. Sato Yamamoto, who specialized in Centauri history. 2 legs, smooth skin, gentle voices, and an inexplicable ability to calm savage beasts. The Centauri records say the Beast Friends vanished suddenly, leaving behind only their animal companions and empty settlements. Back on Kepler 186f, Alex was experiencing the mystery firsthand. The Shadow Maw cubs had grown larger and more intelligent under human care. They could now understand complex verbal instructions, solve simple puzzles, and even seem to show empathy toward other species when humans were present. "They're evolving," Alex reported during his daily communication with the research team. "Not physically, but mentally. It's like being around humans unlocks parts of their brains that were dormant." The adult Shadow Maws had also changed their behavior. Instead of just watching from a distance, they had begun bringing food to the research station. Not aggressive offerings, but gifts. They would leave fresh prey near the facility and retreat, as if paying rent for the humans to care for their young. Tom made another disturbing discovery while analyzing the genetic markers. "The code isn't random," he announced. "It's too organized, too purposeful. Someone designed humans to be living pacification systems for dangerous predators. We're not just compatible with these creatures, we're their biological keys." The research team gathered all their evidence and reached a conclusion that changed everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the universe. Humans weren't just another species that had evolved and reached the stars. They were created, designed at the genetic level to be guardians and protectors of dangerous wildlife across the galaxy. But who had created them? And why had they vanished, leaving behind only their engineered species and the predators programmed to trust them? As Alex watched the Shadow Maw cubs playing peacefully in the evening light, he realized they were no longer just studying animal behavior. They were uncovering evidence of the galaxy's greatest mystery. Ancient engineers who had shaped life itself and then disappeared, leaving humanity as living proof of their existence. The cubs looked up at Alex with trusting eyes, and he wondered what other secrets were hidden in their genetic code. What other purposes had humanity been designed for? And somewhere in the vast darkness of space were their creators still watching. The planet had no name in any modern database, only a set of coordinates that led to the edge of unexplored space. Dr. Lena Foster stood on its barren surface, staring at the massive metal structure that jutted from the ground like a technological mountain. After months of following clues from ancient texts and genetic evidence, the archaeological team had found what they were looking for: the source. "How deep does it go?" asked Dr. James Park, the engineer who specialized in ancient technology. "Our scans show at least 15 levels underground," Lena replied. "Maybe more. The metal is an alloy we don't recognize, but it's still perfectly preserved after millions of years." The structure was enormous, covering several square kilometers and rising nearly a kilometer into the thin atmosphere. It was clearly artificial, but the design was unlike anything in the current galactic databases. The surfaces were smooth and curved, as if the entire complex had been grown rather than built. As the team descended into the facility through a massive entrance that had opened automatically when they approached, emergency lighting activated. Along the corridors, the technology still worked after eons of abandonment, powered by some source that human science couldn't identify. "Look at this," called Dr. Angela Santos, the team's linguist and cultural expert. She stood before a wall covered in symbols that shifted and changed as they watched. "The writing is adapting to us. It's becoming something we can read." The symbols gradually transformed into text that resembled human languages but felt older, somehow, as if their own writing systems had evolved from these original forms. The message that emerged was simple but profound. "Welcome, little shepherds. You have found your way home." Deeper in the complex, they discovered laboratories that defied everything they knew about science. Genetic manipulation equipment that made current technology look like stone tools. Cultural archives that contained the complete history of dozens of civilizations. And everywhere, evidence of the beings who had built this place, the gardeners. They called themselves the Gardeners, Lena read from a massive central archive. They found a universe full of potential, but trapped in cycles of predation and extinction, so they decided to create a solution. The records showed that the Gardeners had been an ancient species whose technology was so advanced it seemed like magic. They could travel between stars instantly, manipulate matter at the atomic level, and design life itself with perfect precision. But they weren't conquerors or rulers. They saw themselves as caretakers of the universe. James discovered the genetic, laboratories where humanity had been created. The equipment was still functional, showing holographic displays of human DNA being assembled piece by piece. But this wasn't random evolution. Every gene had been chosen for a specific purpose. "They designed us to be living pacification systems," James said, his voice filled with awe and horror. "Look at these specifications. Enhanced empathy responses, specific pheromone production, genetic markers that would identify us to predators as safe. We're biological tools." The archives explained the Gardeners' plan in detail. They had studied the ecosystem problems across the galaxy and identified apex predators as the key issue. These creatures were necessary for healthy environments, but their aggressive nature often led to the extinction of other species, including their own young during times of stress. The solution was elegant and terrible. Create a keystone species, whose very existence would trigger protective and nurturing instincts in dangerous predators. Beings who could calm the savage, protect the young, and inspire even the most vicious hunters to become guardians instead of killers. "They made us to be the galaxy's peacekeepers," Angela whispered as she read through cultural files. "Not through force or technology, but through biological programming. We're living keys that unlock the nurturing instincts in predatory species." The records showed that the Gardeners had tested their creation on hundreds of worlds. Early humans were placed in environments with dangerous predators to see if the genetic programming worked. The results were exactly what they had hoped for: instant recognition, protective behavior, and the development of symbiotic relationships. But something had gone wrong with the Gardeners' plan. The final entries in their archives spoke of a great emergency that required their immediate attention, some cosmic threat that forced them to abandon their project before it was complete. They had managed to seed humanity across multiple worlds and program the predator species to recognize them, but they never finished whatever final phase they had planned. "They vanished," Lena said, reading the last entries. "They left emergency, messages saying they had to go deal with something in another galaxy. They promised to return, but that was over 2 million years ago." The team spent days exploring the facility, uncovering more secrets about humanity's true origin. They found evidence that the gardeners had created other species too, beings designed for different purposes across the universe. But humans were their masterpiece, the species that could bring peace to the most chaotic ecosystems. The discovery that shook them most was in the deepest level of the complex, a vast chamber containing thousands of stasis pods, most of them empty but some still active. Inside the active pods were more humans, perfect specimens that looked exactly like modern humans but had never been awakened. "Backup copies," James said grimly. In case their experiment failed, they could start over. One of the pods was opening, its ancient systems responding to their presence. Inside was a man who looked like he could be anyone's neighbor, average height, brown hair, kind eyes. But when their medical scanners examined him, they found genetic patterns that were incredibly pure versions of the markers found in all humans. "He's the template," Angela realized. "This is what they based all of humanity on. The original design." The man's eyes opened slowly, and he looked around with confusion. When he saw the team, he smiled and spoke in a language that somehow everyone understood, even though it should have been impossible. "Have the gardens grown well?" he asked. "Are the shepherds doing their work?" Lena knelt beside the pod. "We are the shepherds," she said gently. "Your plan worked, but you've been gone for millions of years. We evolved, we grew, we became our own people." The man, they decided to call him Adam for simplicity, sat up slowly. "The gardeners had to leave. Something was threatening the life we had planted in other galaxies. We meant to return quickly, but time moves differently when traveling between the stars." He looked at their equipment, their clothes, their faces with growing amazement. "You grew beyond our design," he said with wonder. "You became more than we imagined possible. The shepherds learned to tend themselves." Adam explained that the gardeners had never intended for humans to remain biological tools forever. The plan was to gradually awaken their full potential once the galaxy's ecosystems had stabilized. Humans were supposed to become partners with the gardeners in managing life across the universe. "But you did it yourselves," Adam said proudly. "You developed technology, culture, art, philosophy. You became truly sapient, not just programmed. You exceeded our greatest hopes." As the team prepared to leave the ancient facility, bringing Adam with them to see the galaxy that humanity had built, Lena realized that they had found more than just answers. They had discovered that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their determination. It was their ability to grow beyond their original design. The predator cubs they had been studying weren't just responding to genetic programming. They were recognizing something greater. Beings who had chosen to be protectors and nurturers, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Humanity had been designed as tools, but they had become something far more precious. Partners, in the vast garden of the universe, tending to life wherever they found it. The news spread across human space like wildfire, igniting debates that raged on every world from Earth to the furthest colonies. In the central plaza of New Geneva, crowds gathered around public screens, showing Dr. Lena Foster's historic broadcast. She stood next to Adam, the awakened template human, as she revealed humanity's true origin to the galaxy. "We are not natural evolution," Lena announced to billions of viewers. "We were designed by an ancient species called the gardeners to serve as biological peacekeepers. Every human alive carries genetic programming intended to calm dangerous predators and protect their young. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Some people celebrated, claiming this proved humanity was chosen by higher beings to be special. Others protested in anger, insisting they were more than just sophisticated, tools created by vanished masters. Religious movements sprouted overnight, with some worshipping humans as divine shepherds, while others demanded the destruction of what they saw as unnatural aberrations. On Kepler 186f, Alex watched the chaos unfold while sitting with his shadow maw. Cubs, now nearly full-grown. The cubs sensed his distress and pressed closer, their purring growing louder as they tried to comfort him. Even in the middle of the galaxy's greatest identity crisis, they still saw him as their protector. "Reed, do you think we should do?" Alex asked them, knowing they couldn't answer but needing to voice his thoughts. "Are we really just biological machines, or did we become something more?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Over the past week, adult shadow maws from across the continent had been arriving at the research station. They came in family, groups, bringing their cubs directly to the human settlement instead of hiding them in caves. But these weren't the same terrified, abandoned babies Alex had first found. These cubs were healthy, well cared for, and accompanied by proud parents. Dr. Mira Okafor, who had remained on the moon to continue her research, made a startling discovery. "The relationship is evolving," she reported to the emergency council that had formed to address the crisis. "The predators aren't just following genetic programming anymore. They're making conscious choices." She showed them footage of adult shadow maws working together to build better shelters near human settlements. The creatures were using tools, planning ahead, and teaching their young skills they had never demonstrated before. Most remarkably, they were showing kindness to other species when humans were present, as if humanity's influence was helping them overcome their predatory instincts. On worlds where humans have embraced their role as protectors, we're seeing evolutionary leaps in predator intelligence and behavior, Mira explained. "It's like our presence unlocks hidden potential in their genetic code. They're becoming more than they were designed to be, just like we did." Similar reports came in from across the galaxy. On Proxima 7, the razorback spiders had begun creating art with their webs when humans were around. On New Eden, stormwings were learning to work cooperatively with human aircraft, guiding them safely through dangerous weather. The predators were growing beyond their original programming, inspired by their human partners. But humanity faced a choice that would define their future. They could reject their design purpose and risk losing these remarkable relationships, or they could accept their origin while choosing to make it something greater. The decision came to a head when the Galactic Council called an emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to debate humanity's place in the universe. Some alien governments demanded that humans be quarantined, fearing that biological weapons were too dangerous to roam free. Others argued that humanity's gifts were too valuable to restrict. Adam, the template human, addressed the council with words that would be remembered for centuries. "The gardeners created us to be tools," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast assembly hall. "But tools can choose how they are used. A hammer can build a house or destroy one. The choice belongs to whoever holds it." He gestured toward the viewing screens showing images of humans working with predator species across the galaxy. Humanity has chosen to build rather than destroy. They have taken the gifts they were given and made them into something the gardeners never imagined. True partnerships based on trust and choice rather than mere programming. The debate that followed lasted for days. In the end, it was the predator species themselves who provided the answer. Delegations of intelligent shadow maws, razorbacks, stormwings, and dozens of other species arrived at the council chambers. They had never participated in galactic politics before, but humanity's influence had awakened their potential for complex thought and communication. The Shadow Maw spokesperson, a massive creature that had learned to speak through a translation device, delivered a simple message. Humans are our partners, not our masters. We choose to trust them because they have earned that trust. Take them away, and we will follow. Accept them, and we will help build a galaxy where predators and prey can live in peace. Faced with the united voice of dozens of newly intelligent species, the Galactic Council made their decision. Humanity would be recognized not as biological weapons, but as mediators and protectors. Their unique abilities would be celebrated rather than feared, and they would be given support to expand their peacekeeping work across the galaxy. Back on Kepler 186f, Alex made his own choice. When offered the chance to return to Earth and a normal life, he decided to stay with the Shadowmaw pack that had become his family. The cubs he had raised were now magnificent adults, but they still came to him for guidance and comfort. Their own cubs, born into a world where humans and Shadowmaws lived together, showed no fear of any species. They had learned trust from their parents rather than being born with programmed terror. This is what the gardeners really wanted. Alex realized as he watched young Shadowmaws playing with Vortani children and Threx researchers. Not just biological programming, but genuine understanding between species. The transformations spread rapidly across the galaxy. Humans who chose to embrace their role as peacekeepers found themselves welcomed on worlds that had previously been too dangerous to explore. Predator species that had been isolated by their own aggression began joining the galactic community, their intelligence and capabilities enhanced by human partnership. Dr. Emma Chen established the Shepherd Corps, a volunteer organization of humans who dedicated their lives to working with dangerous species. They weren't soldiers or researchers, but teachers and friends who helped predator species develop their newfound intelligence and emotional capabilities. Applications flooded in from across human space, people eager to be part of something greater than themselves. The most remarkable changes happened to the predator species themselves. Freed from the constant stress of survival and territory disputes, they began developing art, music, and philosophy. Shadowmaw poetry became famous for its fierce beauty. Razorback sculptures woven from their own silk adorned galleries on dozens of worlds. Stormwing songs, carried on wind currents across entire continents, became a new form of long-distance communication. But perhaps the most important development was that the fear response in newborn predators began to fade. Cubs and chicks born on worlds with established human-predator partnerships showed curiosity toward alien species rather than terror. The genetic programming was still there, but it was being overwritten by learned behavior and conscious choice. We are witnessing the birth of a new kind of galactic civilization, Adam observed, as he worked with human and alien scientists to better understand the changes. One where the strongest species choose to protect rather than dominate. The gardeners' plan had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, but not in the way they had intended. Instead of creating biological tools that would mechanically maintain order, they had sparked an evolution of consciousness across multiple species. Predators were learning empathy, humans were embracing their role as protectors, and even prey species were finding new courage to explore and create. Years passed, and the galaxy settled into its new pattern. Human settlements became centers of interspecies cooperation, places where the most dangerous and gentle creatures could meet safely. Children grew up playing with cubs that their parents had once feared, while ancient predators learned to express themselves through art and song instead of violence. Alex, now older and recognized as one of the founding shepherds, often sat in the evening with his original Shadowmaw pack. The cubs he had first found abandoned and terrified were now grandparents themselves, leading multi-generational families that included adopted members from other species. Did we make the right choice? He sometimes wondered aloud. The answer came in the form of a young Shadowmaw cub approaching a Vortani child with a flower in its mouth, a gift rather than a threat. Or in the sight of adult razorbacks teaching their silk-weaving techniques to human artists. or in the sound of Stormwing's songs that now carried messages of peace instead of territorial warnings. The predator cubs no longer feared everyone, but humans. They had learned that the universe was full of potential friends rather than enemies, and that trust could be earned through kindness rather than programmed through genetics. The gardeners had planted seeds of peace, but it was the choices, made by humans and predators together, that had grown them into a garden of understanding. As night fell over Kepler 186f, Alex watched the stars emerge in the purple sky. Somewhere among them, the gardeners might still be working to nurture life in distant galaxies. If they ever returned, they would find that their greatest creation wasn't the biological programming they had designed, but the capacity for growth and choice they had accidentally given to their children. The cubs curled up around Alex as they had for years, but now they were joined by their own offspring and youngsters from a dozen other species. The research station had become something the gardeners never planned for, a true home where beings chose to live together not because they had to, but because they wanted to. In the end, the predator cubs had taught humanity the most important lesson of all. Fear could be overcome, trust could be learned, and family was not defined by genetics, but by the choice to care for one another. The galaxy had become a gentler place, not through force or programming, but through the simple decision to treat each other with kindness. And in that choice lay the seed of something greater than any ancient design could have imagined. A future where every species, no matter how fearsome or gentle, could find their place in the vast garden of the universe.